Okay, so I believe the recording is in process. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Gabriella Gallagher, and I'm the National Chair of Canadian Friends of Peace Now. We are the partner organization to Peace Now, Shalom Achav, which is Israel's leading peace movement and which promotes the two-state solution to the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. You can find out more about us on our website, www.peacenowcanada.org. We hope you will consider supporting us with a donation, which you can do via the donate page on our website. Later, we will have time for audience questions. Please type your questions at any time using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. Please make your question as concise as you can. Our webinar is being recorded and will be posted to our website. This webinar will end at 1:15, so it will run approximately 75 minutes. Our moderator today is David Cohen, who is with the Montreal chapter of CFPN. Jaime Aronovitz will field the audience questions. Okay, David, over to you.
Thank you, Gabriella. We have two distinguished and seasoned activists as our guests today. Gershon Baskin has more than 46 years of expertise in Israeli-Palestinian conflict resolution and is renowned for orchestrating the release of abducted Israeli soldier Galit Shalit. Samer Sinil Jawi is a Fatah opponent, the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, and chairman of the Jerusalem Development Fund. He is the Palestinian commentator with the most appearances in Israeli media. Our topic today is on how to pursue peace in a time of war. Is this an ambitious and unrealistic goal? Well, let us see what our distinguished guests have to say. So let's start with my first question. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict seems to be in a worse state than ever. The war in Gaza has resumed. Hamas still holds hostages. Violence in the West Bank is very high. There are increasing calls in Israel to attack Iran. Israel continues to bomb Lebanon and Syria, while the US attacks the Houthis and threatens Iran. Would each of you please describe the current state of affairs from your perspective? I suggest that you each respond for no more than 5 minutes so that we have time for our other questions. I will give you a signal or break-in when the 5 minutes are almost up. So let us start with Gershon, please.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for inviting us, and good evening from Jerusalem. The picture that you painted is certainly a very bleak picture, and it's one that we're all very aware of. In fact, even talking about peace today between Israel and Palestine seems like someone must be taking psychedelic drugs and not facing reality. There's no question that October 7th was the most traumatic event for the Jewish people since the Holocaust. And I would venture to say that what's been going on in Gaza for the past year and a half is more traumatic for the Palestinian people than even the Nakba of 1948. So we have two peoples living in trauma, and to imagine that it's capable to get together and imagine a future which is not a continuation of the 100 years that we've been killing each other, you have to be somewhat deranged, I think. But in reality, a different reality is that when this war is over, and it will eventually end, there will remain more than 7 million Israeli Jews and more than 7 million Palestinian Arabs living on the land between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea. And the question that has to arise to all of us is, are we going to continue doing this, of the killing each other for more than 100 years over what I call a territorial expression of our identity? I think more than ever before, the reality that the people of Israel and the people of Palestine are not going anywhere should be hit home harder than ever before to both people here that need to come to understand that there is no military solution to this conflict. There has never been a military solution to this conflict. There is no military solution to the future of Gaza. Anyone who believes that there is a military solution to get rid of Hamas simply doesn't understand the reality of Gaza, the Palestinian people, or the Hamas movement. So we are faced with what Samer and I have come to work together toward is the notion that the biggest challenge, or the two biggest challenges that face us, is one, that we have no leadership to lead us toward peace, not in Israel, not in Palestine. We have failed leadership. And the second reality that we need to confront is that a majority of Israelis and a majority of Palestinians want to live in peace, but simply don't believe there are partners for peace on the other side of the conflict. And this is a reality that's existed since at least 2000, at the outbreak of the Second Intifada. When I meet Israelis and I meet Palestinians all over Israel and all over Palestine, from every population group, I hear from both populations, I want to live in peace, but they don't. And I hear this from Israelis and Palestinians. A majority of Israelis and a majority of Palestinians have come to the conclusion that while they want to live in peace, there aren't partners for peace on the other side. And if both sides are saying this, then we need to think about how do we dispel this myth that there's no partners for peace on the other side. The Israelis and the Palestinians are not stupid. They voice the reality that they live with. The reality that Israelis and Palestinians have lived with since the year 2000, at least since 2000, is that the behavior of both sides toward each other is a behavior of non-partnership, of not willingness to make the concessions necessary to accept the reality of the national existence of the other people here. And this is why Samer and I are dedicated to create processes that will take us out of secret meeting rooms where the Israelis and Palestinians sit together and put this into the light of the sun in front of the publics in both sides, bringing together more and more Israeli-Palestinian cooperation on a political platform that supports the two-state solution, because it's the only solution that can get us out of the mess that we're living in. The basic principle that we all need to accept is that everyone living between the river and the sea has the same right to the same rights. There is no possibility for peace here with the notion of Jewish superiority, or the notion that from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free and there's no place for Israel. We need to face each other head on, look each other in the eyes, and recognize the legitimacy of the national existence of the other people living in this land. We have nothing to gain from engaging in a battle of narratives and a battle of history of who was here first and who has more right to be here. We're here more or less in equal numbers, and no one's going anywhere. So what we need to do is, on the one side, create new leadership, and on the other side, create partnership in the belief that there are partners. So that's what we're engaging in, and Samer will tell you more about it.
Thank you, Gershon. Okay, how about you, Samer? Please, your perspective.
Well, currently, both Palestinians and Israelis are living a cocktail of hard feelings, anger, pain, I can say maybe hatred, the desire to revenge. And it's happening on both sides. The Israelis in reaction of the 7th of October, and the 7th of October is a bleeding wound, and it will continue to be so as far as there are hostages inside Gaza, because the trauma will not end until the Israelis get back all their hostages from Gaza. So to help heal the Israelis from the trauma of the 7th of October, we should work as soon as possible to get back the hostages to their families. And the Palestinians, they have a bleeding wound because it is still happening. Until now, in this moment, there are people, mainly civilians in Gaza, who are losing their lives on a daily basis. 17 months of the war, I think, did not help any side to achieve major goals that most of the Israelis and Palestinians would like to achieve. I was hoping that with all the price that the Palestinians are paying in Gaza, this war could end the regime of Hamas. But unfortunately, we have seen each time there was a hostages exchange in every Saturday that Hamas is still there controlling. Okay, they are the only army in the world that puts on uniform during ceasefire and takes off the uniform during war, but still we could have seen that as if for Hamas, as if the Israeli army has never entered Gaza. But for the Palestinian civilians, even in 10 years after the withdrawal of the Israeli army, they will feel as if the Israeli army has never left Gaza. Those who are paying the price for the current war are the civilians. And it puts a big question mark. And I think most of the Israelis agree with me. Will more of the same be helpful to Israelis or Palestinians to achieve anything? More of the same more in Gaza? I think it's all the Palestinians, most of the world, and most of the Israeli society are against the continuation of the war and are pro a diplomatic path that can bring the hostages back. So, what can we do? It's very complicated. I think in this time, it's very important for us to witness a change of leadership. As far as we are under the control of the current political elite in Israel and in Palestine. And I don't say on Israel as if I am trying to lecture the Israelis or advise them or represent them or speak on behalf of them, but because I know that the majority of the Israeli public is now came to the conclusion that it's time for the current political elite to leave. It's time for the current Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to leave the political scene. It's more an Israeli conclusion and request. We, the Palestinians, too, we are fed up from both Abbas in the West Bank and Hamas in Gaza. Abbas has brought upon us years of corruption that is becoming systematic, that is feeding us with disappointments and anger, but we are not able to protest this kind of regime that is forcing us into bunkers of corruption and dictatorship. And the Palestinians are fed up from the regime of Hamas in Gaza that brought destruction upon them. So also Palestinians would like to see a third way of hope and construction replacing corruption and destruction.
Thank you, Samir. Here's my second question. Trump and Netanyahu talk about voluntary transfer of Gazans to unknown countries. Netanyahu speaks of total victory over Hamas, which appears to mean disarming Hamas and transferring administrative control of Gaza from Hamas to a consortium of moderate Arab countries, while Israel keeps overall security control until further notice. The Arab League, supported by many European countries, proposes a Gaza-based technocratic government to govern Gaza. There appears to be no consensus on how to stop the war and on the future of Gaza. Are these realistic solutions or are there better ones? Please speak for 5 minutes on this. And sorry, 4 minutes. Samer, up to you, please.
Well, I think uh, maybe President Trump has suggested the relocation of the Gaza not out of hard feelings or not out of allying himself to the right wing ideology in Israel and USA. I think maybe I would like to suppose that he has proposed this idea out of good intentions. Maybe he thought that this is the only way he can better the lives of Gaza and end their suffering. I'd like to believe so, uh, because he has been engaged with some other leaders from the Arab world, mainly King Abdullah of Jordan and President Macron of France. And it seems that he was able to say, okay, if this is not a good plan, let me have a different plan. Okay, so he has thrown this suggestion and he is looking forward to see something else proposed. So I would not really concentrate a lot and put a lot of worries behind the words that he has uttered only one time, and it was spontaneous or almost. I don't think that President Trump still have a complete, comprehensive plan to the Middle East, but I think the Middle East is on his agenda, and he has the intention to put a plan sometime in the future. Relocating Gazans is an illusion, is a fantasy. Whether the Prime Minister of Israel plans for it, whether his coalition puts resources to it, it's not going to happen. Because maybe not everybody realizes this, but we Palestinians, we are so connected to the land, to the same level that Israelis are connected to the land. The Israeli people can understand us, can understand our connection, our link to the land, because they themselves have the same feeling. So it's not easy to push Palestinians out. And this term of voluntary relocation or voluntary immigration is really silly and naive. How do you call it voluntary? And it comes under conditions of very harsh war for 17 months, where people are moving from one place to another place under tents, where people don't have enough food and water. And then if you open the borders and they flee out, you call it voluntary. This is not voluntary. If you want to make it voluntary, we need to reconstruct Gaza, to stabilize the lives of the people, to make their economic situation sustainable. And then, when everything is provided to them, if they choose to leave, this is voluntary leaving. But the way now that Prime Minister Netanyahu and his coalition is trying to market his intention of forcing the Palestinians to leave Gaza as a voluntary immigration is bluffing everybody. This is not voluntary immigration if it happens. If the Israeli army will start pushing Palestinians out, let us say that somebody will open the border from the other side. Egypt will not allow it, and Jordan will not allow it.
Thank you, Samir. Gershon, your turn, please. I'm very uh, impressed by how disciplined our guests are with their time. Your turn,
Your raising
Gershon.
hand makes us stop, so it's okay. And I agree with everything that Samer said. I would emphasize it even more. The only people in the world who took Trump seriously with regard to the relocation of 2 million Gazans from Gaza is Netanyahu and the idiots in his government. Our very intelligent Minister of Defense has created an executive branch of the Israeli army to coordinate the voluntary exit of Palestinians from Gaza. This is nothing short of ethnic cleansing and should be understood as that. As much as this is a falsehood, so is the notion of the total victory. There's no total victory over Hamas. There is no military victory over Hamas. In fact, the current Israeli strategy, which is being employed with an apparent green light from Donald Trump, is to restock the war and to make Hamas surrender. That Hamas will voluntarily give up the 59 hostages that they're holding. That's not going to happen. What will happen, or what is possibly might happen, and is horrible to even imagine, is that Hamas will execute the hostages that it's holding. That's what the result of the military pressure will be. The Israelis seem to think that Hamas has no leverage. that Hamas is broken down, that Hamas can't do anything anymore. But as long as Hamas is holding 59 hostages, they have 59 pieces of leverage that they can use against Israel. And Hamas will not surrender. This is not Nazi Germany, nor is this ISIS. This is a completely different situation, and the Hamas movement is not the Nazi Germany. It is not ISIS. Hamas will not surrender. It is true that there is no Hamas political leadership in Gaza today, which is a very dangerous situation because the political leadership is outside and is taking decisions for Hamas inside of Gaza, where Hamas inside of Gaza today is a bunch of military commanders at level 2, 3, and 4 of the military command. And the worst thing that could happen is that these military commanders in Gaza could decide that they're not going to take instructions from the Hamas political leadership outside. Israel has to negotiate a deal with the Hamas leadership outside through Egypt and Qatar to free the hostages. There is no other way of freeing the hostages. And there is no deal with Hamas that does not end the war and does not lead to Israeli withdrawal from Gaza. That is the price of bringing the hostages home. Now, it's very clear that Netanyahu has decided not to bring the hostages home. If he believes that Hamas is going to surrender and voluntarily release the hostages, then what Netanyahu is doing is sacrificing the hostages. Of the 59 hostages, now, according to the Israelis, it's believed that maybe only 21 of them are alive. And from the conditions that the hostages have been kept, we know from those who have come back, it's very likely that they won't survive. Not the continued Israeli bombing of Gaza, nor the conditions that they're under. Just to remind everyone, that the 2.2 million people in Gaza are running out of food and don't have clean water and don't have sanitation and don't have a roof over their heads. And if the people of Gaza don't have food and water, I can guarantee you that the hostages don't have food and water either. So we are actually sentencing the hostages to death by the continued military actions that Israel is undertaking in Gaza. The future of Gaza has to be political, and there are political solutions involving the kind of things that was suggested in the Egyptian plan that was supported by the Arab League of some kind of temporary Gaza administration of Palestinians. There is no future for Gaza with an Israeli military government. There is no future for Gaza where Israel holds military responsibility of Gaza and expects the Arab world to come in and control Gaza while Israel's troops are inside of Gaza or controlling Gaza. That's not going to happen. There has to be a legitimate, viable Palestinian entity in Gaza that has to be in some way linked to the Palestinian Authority, but independent from it. And eventually down the road, Palestinians need to go to elections and vote for their own government that represents them, that's legitimate and viable in their own eyes, and hopefully committed to peace with Israel.
Thank you, Gershon. My third question, which actors today hold the most cards to push for their preferred solution in Gaza and the West Bank? What kind of scenarios can we expect before a new government is elected in Israel? Please speak for 4 minutes. Gershon, please.
Yeah, well, first of all, the most urgent thing is to end the war and bring the hostages home. And there's only one person who's holding the cards here, and that's Donald Trump. And in the next 24 hours, Netanyahu is going to be in the Oval Office meeting with Trump. And if Trump says to Netanyahu, end the war, make the deal, bring the hostages home, then that's what will happen. Because that's how the first ceasefire deal happened. The deal was on the table from the end of May when President Biden presented it. But it was only when Trump told Netanyahu about 3 weeks before he entered the Oval Office, he told Netanyahu, make the deal and do it, that the deal was made. Trump is also apparently the person who gave the green light to Netanyahu to renew the war, to end the ceasefire, and not to enter into the phase 2 that was negotiated by his chief envoy, Steve Witkoff. Since the deal broke down and Israel broke down the deal, Israel violated the ceasefire. Israel had no intention of implementing phase 2 of the ceasefire. Hamas made a compromise by entering into it with the understanding and the guarantees that they received from Egypt and Qatar that there would be a phase 2, but there was never an Israeli intention of doing the phase 2. We need Trump to tell Netanyahu to end it. With regard to bigger political horizons and the future of the two-state solution, that's really going to depend on new Israeli and Palestinian leadership. There can't be a Pax Americana or a peace agreement imposed on Israel and the Palestinians from outside. It really has to come from within. It has to be generated by the Israeli and the Palestinian people. Sadly, There's almost no leadership on the Israeli side talking about peace with the Palestinians or a two-state solution. We have a combination of inept political leaders, corrupt political leaders, and cowards who make up our political horizon. None of them show the kind of courageous leadership that we need to pull us out of the mess that we're in. On the Palestinian side, there's only one person I can think of. Samer will talk about him, Nasser Kidwa, who most of you probably don't know, but Nasser is a very well-known Palestinian who was the PLO representative in the UN for 17 years, was a foreign minister in the Palestinian government, is the nephew of Yasser Arafat, is in exile now in France because in 2021, he was running a political party that was going to compete in the elections to which 86% of Palestinians registered to participate. And his political list was made up of Fatah people opposed to Mahmoud Abbas, like Samer. Nasser's list was supported by Marwan Barghouti. In fact, Marwan Barghouti's wife Fatwa was number 2 on his list. And Nasser is the person that Samer and I brought together with Ehud Olmert, the former Israeli prime minister, who brought Israel and the Palestinians closer to peace than ever before in 2008, 2009. And we brought Olmert and Nasser Kidwa together. We've been working together for the last 5 months, presenting a vision of peace to the international community and to the Israelis and Palestinians. We'll talk a little bit afterwards about what our plans are for this bringing together of these two former leaders.
Ramer, would you like to respond to Gershon about what he said about the Palestinian leadership?
Yes. Well, I would like to confirm again that there is only one party in this conflict. So if we think that there is two parties, the Israelis and Palestinians, we are mistaken. There is only one party, and don't misunderstand me, it's not the Israeli side. The only party in this conflict is the American side. And we have seen that during the administration of President Biden, he put a plan for the release of the hostages in May and sent his state secretary around 20 times to the region from the beginning of the war. And he couldn't push that plan at all until he left the White House in January 2025. So almost 8 months, and he couldn't push things on the ground. Not because USA can't push things on the ground, because he did not have the will. He personally did not make up and decide that he wants to end the war and release the hostages. While Trump, even before stepping inside the Oval Office and before the inauguration in the 20th of January, he just tweeted one tweet that was enough to push the sides to implement the plan that Biden was trying to implement and couldn't. So the person that manages, that runs the Oval Office in DC is capable to do a lot of things if he wants. And Trump does have the capability. And Trump is a person that everybody fears to mess up with, even Prime Minister Netanyahu. Because usually when Prime Minister Netanyahu was in disagreement with the Democratic administration, he knew he can go to the Republicans. And he knew that he can have their support, whether in the Congress or in the Senate or even in the echo chamber of the decision maker in Washington, D.C. But now, Bibi knows that if he disagrees with Trump, he doesn't have anybody else to go to. And he knows that this guy sometimes goes crazy in favor of Israel, but sometimes can go crazy against the will of Bibi. So the USA has a lot of potential to end this war and to release the rest of the hostages. It's in the hands of President Trump. But I don't underestimate the importance of the local elements in Israel and Palestine, but they cannot be effective now. They can be effective in November 26 if the Israelis go to the election. And lots of Israelis now, they have a doubt or question mark whether will Bibi and his coalition respect the date of the elections, or he will use the war as an excuse to extend the date of the elections. But let us say that in end of 26 there will be an Israeli election. A change of leadership in Israel will help us a lot to exit the current war and maybe to exit the whole conflict. While a lot of things are happening inside the Palestinian side now that are pushing more Abbas out of the political life of the Palestinians. Abbas, by the way, is not and will never be an asset to a political horizon. He is always a burden. He is 90 years old. He lost all his connection to the Palestinian state and the reality, and he is not functioning simply. In 17 months of the war, he couldn't find 5 minutes to address his people and speak on his opinion of what's happening. We lost 70,000 lives in Gaza, and he couldn't find the time to address us and talk about what does he think of what's happening and what's his obligation and how can he help into bringing this to an end. So he is uh, uh, on the silent mood. He is not relevant, not for escalation, not for de-escalation, and he is pushed more and more by regional players out of the political life. This will, these internal developments will help Israelis and Palestinians to be ready for the moment at the end of 26 to push things positively towards exiting the war and the conflict.
Dr. Samer, it seems that Samer, yourself and Gershon agree that Trump holds the key card to stop the war. The question is, how come Trump is not using that card? Or are you expecting him to use that card very soon? So both of you.
I think we'll know the answer to that in the next couple of days. Netanyahu's plane is somewhere over the Atlantic Ocean right now on its way to Washington. There is going to be a meeting between Trump and Netanyahu, and we will see what the outcome of that meeting is. I know that I have transmitted messages to Mr. Witkoff over the last weeks of the importance of Trump, knowing that he is the person who can end the war. And I remind Mr. Witkoff that both on election night and on the inauguration day, Trump said that he is a person who is going to end wars, not make new wars. And he has the responsibility to carry through with that. Now, I don't have great confidence in Donald Trump and personally think he's the most dangerous person in the world. But he is the person who also has the possibility of bringing an end to the war in Gaza. And all the necessary pressure possible needs to be applied to him. I think that we saw that Miriam Adelson, not a fan of any of us, I think, in terms of her political position, influenced Trump substantially in phase one of the ceasefire deal to get him to push that deal on Netanyahu. And maybe she needs to do this again. We know that she's very committed to the hostage families. In my mind, as an Israeli, the most important thing that needs to happen is bringing the hostages home. We don't begin to overcome the trauma that we've lived in the last 17 months until the hostages are home. And Israel will never be Israel again if we sacrifice those hostages as we've done until now. So that's really the most important thing. Is Trump going to do it? I have no idea. I think he's totally unpredictable. I think that he's losing interest in Israel and Gaza and the Palestinians. He has his attention focused anywhere elsewhere, his magical tariffs and his desire to make Canada the 51st state or Greenland or whatever other fantasies he has. He's busy with other things, Russia and Ukraine and China. Who knows where his mind is? We need him, at least for the next 48 hours, to refocus on Israel and Gaza and to get this war over.
Okay, thanks, Roshan. Samer, what do you think about how come Trump is not using his card to stop the war and come up with a realistic solution?
Well, Trump is less than 3 months in office. He still did not build up his administration. We can see now that the State Department is until now not involved in the Middle East. We can see that the National Security Council also have not been so active as the previous one in the Middle East. We see only one person, Steve Witkoff, who is doing all the job. He's reporting directly to the president. So still the administration did not stand up in their positions, and they are still filling some jobs there. The teams are still trying to identify their roles. They need to do a lot of coordination between the State Department and the Defense Department and then National Security Council, the White House. Uh, but I think Trump, he knows that he doesn't have 4 years to implement whatever he has in mind. He has only 2 years because in the midterm elections, he will lose his control of the Congress and the Senate, maybe both of them. So the complete control that he has now in USA has a time limit of 2 years, already 3 months passed. And I can understand that he is motivated by two things. He's motivated by the desire to receive the Nobel Peace Prize. For him, I mean, seeing Obama getting the Peace Prize without doing any peace agreement was very depressing for him. He has done the Abrahamic Accords and he did not get this Peace Prize. This guy, he has everything he wants except few things, including the Nobel Peace Prize. So I think he will have this in mind. He has more possibilities to get it out of the Middle East, not out of the Russian Ukrainian situation. And if this is his intentions and his direction, then I believe that he will focus more on how to bring the Saudis to a normalization with Israel. And then the Saudis will become a very important factor because the Saudis are very clear. They want to have normalization with Israel. They would like to enter into a regional security arrangements that will make the whole Middle East as a one defensive group in front of the Iranians, because you might not realize it. We, the Sunni Muslims, are maybe more important enemies to the Iranians than the Israelis. Traditionally, historically, they have confronted us and we have always hard feelings towards each other. So the Iranians, they know that the enemy is the Arab Sunni, moderate Arab Sunnis, and the Jewish state together. If we become a bloc against the Iranians, and whether we want it or not, Israel does not have any offensive solution to the Iranian nuclear capabilities. Israel cannot attack Iranian the way that it attacked Syria. The Iranian nuclear capabilities is deep, more than 100 meters under the ground. The bombs and the aircrafts that Israel has today cannot target the nuclear capabilities of Iran. Iran is going to be a nuclear state soon. Only the Americans can attack, and the Americans will not attack Iran. So the best way for us and for Israel is to build up defensive strategies against the Iranian. And this needs the normalization with the Saudi Arabia, the unchallenged leader of the Arab and Muslim world. When Israel signs an agreement with the Palestinians and the Saudis, I suggest that Israel needs to change its independence date from the 14th of May to the day that it signs with Saudi Arabia and with the Palestinians. This is the real independent day for Israel, where Israel will start to be a villa in a very nice neighborhood instead of being a villa in a jungle. So President Trump knows that he needs the Saudis and he can achieve his second target in addition to the Nobel Prize with the Saudis, which is financial. President Trump has in his mind to grow economically as a person, as a family, as a group. So he wants to grow economically. He needs ties with wherever there is a lot of investment capabilities, the Gulf countries. So I see that he is motivated to close a deal in the Middle East, but he has 2 years. So let's not rush things. Let's see in the coming, maybe Gershon said in the coming hours, I will say in the coming months. We could know more about the intention and how serious he is to put an end to this conflict.
Thank you, Samer. Gershon, do you have anything to add to what Samer is saying about
Oh,
Trump,
I accept what Samer said. I think that
Iran?
the Saudis are extremely important. They're important to Israel, and the Saudis, while some people might say they don't really care about the Palestinians, what Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince, has said is that his people care about the Palestinians. And during the Biden administration, when negotiations were going on between the Biden administration and the Saudis were talking about a path toward a Palestinian state. Since this war began, the Saudis are talking about a Palestinian state and not a path to a Palestinian state as a condition for normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia. And this is really important to Israel, and it is the primary incentive for Israel to change its political dynamics in the region. But it's not going to happen as long as Netanyahu is prime minister of Israel. So let's be aware of that. And I hope that Netanyahu's days are numbered. We have a very defective political situation here in Israel that a majority of Israelis want Netanyahu out, and we don't know how to get rid of him. And the more that we want him out, the more he's holding on to power through all the corruption and through all the scandals that are coming. Maybe this new Qatar Gate scandal will be the one that will bring him down. Something has to bring him down. But eventually, he will not be prime minister of Israel, and then we're going to have to face the alternatives and deal with what alternative political constellations are out there that will change the current ruling elite of Israel. There's no question in my mind that if there's a change of leadership on the Palestinian side, if Mahmoud Abbas is history, and there is someone like Nasser Kidwa who comes into power, who supports peace with Israel and is against violence and demonstrates a turnaround in Palestinian politics, that will have a deep impact on Israeli political reality as well. It should be the situation where the stronger party takes the first step, but that's not going to happen as long as our current regime is in power in Israel. And if the Palestinians were to take the first step, it would have a really dynamic motion put into place that would change the political arena in Israel as well.
Thank you, Gershon. Well, thank you very much, both of you, Samer and Gershon, for your insights. I will now turn to my colleague Jaime to field questions from the audience.
Thank you.
Jaime?
Thank you. Yes. I'm just
Okay.
consolidating some of the questions that I have here. So, with no particular order, but there are some questions from the audience talking about the current conditions in the Palestinian population and also the growing criticism on Hamas. So could you share, first of all, what are the living conditions and in the community, the roads, the food, the supplies, the communications, unemployment, and how these conditions may influence people's view on the conflict and their willingness to see a leadership in the change of leadership? So that's a question for Samer.
Yeah,
And
but is the question about the West Bank, East Jerusalem, or Gaza, or all?
well, the question is not precise, but I would like to refer it to the conditions in Gaza with the supplies and, of course, with the current demonstrations against Hamas. And for Gershon, if we can flip this question also to the Israeli side, if you see any impact of the demonstrations that are happening week after week, if they're having any impact on the Israeli government to make any changes in the way how the events are developing. So who wants to go
Well,
first?
the situation of the Palestinians in Gaza is beyond the imagination of any human mind. It's terrible. People during the winter, kids and babies, were killed because of the cold weather, not because of the bombs. The cold weather became lethal in Gaza. To almost 1.8 million people are living under plastic tents, and they are requested to move every couple of weeks from one place to another place. We don't have names for our victims. We cannot bury them. We cannot find them. So whole families were vanished from the civil register, and simply nobody knew where they are. We have seen some families going back from the south to the north, and when they started, digging in the rumble and the destruction of their homes, they started finding the human remainings of their beloved ones. So it's a catastrophe. It's a human tragedy there, and with all this pain, with the people who are trying during the day to find basic things like water and bread to their kids, yet their anger came to a level that they cannot take it anymore, and they exploded against Hamas because yes, these bombs are American and those who are throwing these bombs as Israelis, but now the population is recognizing that it was Hamas call, and they should be held responsible on what they have been doing to them. Hamas simply woke up on the 7th of October and they decided to take 2.3 million Palestinians in a massive collective suicide attack against Israel without thinking in a minimal way what will be the reaction of Israel towards the population, without acting as a responsible regime. I mean, Hamas is a regime. They cannot say that we are a resistance movement. You are a regime. You take decisions on behalf of 2.3 million people. You collect taxes from them. You have a court system. You are controlling their life. So yes, you are responsible on any harm that is caused on them, even by the others, if it was your call. So these demonstrations are an example of how angry the Palestinians against Hamas. And it is also a proof that the population in Gaza is also a victim of Hamas, because some people might say there is no one innocent in Gaza. Even a baby that was born after the 7th of October is not innocent. This is not true. The majority of Gazans are victims of Hamas, and they are expressing now their anger. Unfortunately, if we don't support these demonstrations, they will die. If we leave them alone, they will get tired soon. Until today, there are still demonstrations, but it's cooling down because we are all just, looking at them and not trying to provide a hand to them. More, it is our responsibility as Palestinians to try to help our brothers there and give them a hand and show them that at least in their efforts to get rid of Hamas, we can stand by them. Because maybe we cannot do anything into trying to stop the war that Israel is launching. But we can do a lot into trying to push Hamas out of their lives. And if we don't find an exit for Hamas outside of Gaza, outside of the political life, the suffering of the Gazas will continue. Now, on the West Bank, it's a different kind of tragedy there. We have a corrupt leadership that uses the resources, the minimal resources that the Palestinians have, only to protect the regime. They don't care about the rest of them. Currently, the majority of people in the West Bank are unemployed because there were 250,000 people who used to earn their living by working inside Israel. And after the 7th of October, they are blocked. They cannot go and work. And another 250,000 people depend on their salaries from the PA. The employer is the PA. And the PA, the Palestinian Authority, is about to collapse financially. They are not paying salaries for several months. So 500,000 households in the West Bank out of 750, they are not earning any dollar almost during during the months of the war. So the economic situation is catastrophe. Because of the war and because of the intentions of the current coalition in Israel, they made the lives of Palestinians more complicated by forcing more checkpoints. Currently, there are around 1,000 checkpoints in the West Bank. If you want to move from one neighborhood to one neighborhood, it takes you hours and hours. Checkpoints that do nothing except of killing the time of the people waiting in queue. Nothing. You wait a car until you arrive, they look at you and they let you go. So in a way or another, it's a ticking bomb situation. Those who think that these arrangements of intensifying the military closure over Palestinians in the West Bank could be the conditions needed to secure the stability of the West Bank, they are mistaken. It is the same people who thought on the 6th of October that by feeding Hamas with the poison money from Qatar, they could buy the stability in Gaza. We all slept on the 6th of October thinking that there was a cat in Gaza. And we woke up on the 7th of October and we discovered that they have fed a dinosaur in Gaza. And nobody noted it. Now, the same people, the same genius people, think that by these procedures, by allowing Smotrich to expand settlement, by letting the hilltop youth do whatever they want, everything is permissible for them. They can put in fire, they can do pogroms, they can shoot, they can steal, they can do whatever they want. Even the army now is not allowed to use the administrative detention against them. Not a single arrest, not one. So this is very dangerous. I am very worried about what's going to happen in the West Bank. God knows. I want to ask you a question. What separates the settlement of Psagot from the Palestinian city of Al-Bira, or the settlement of Beit El from the Palestinian city of Ramallah, or any Israeli settlement in the West Bank from any neighboring Palestinian village or city? It's a fence of 1.5 meters, simple fence that you have in your gardens. If the wall in Gaza did not protect Israel from a 7th of October, can you imagine what could happen if Hamas decided to do 10 mini 7th of October every day in the West Bank, and they can do it? And they are not doing it because they don't want to do it now, not because somebody is preventing them and has security arrangements that blocks this. So it's very dangerous. And it's time to start realizing that the only way to save the lives of Palestinians and Israelis together is to go in a direction of peace of no choice. Because a war of no choice has led us to nowhere for 75 years. Of course, there is a lot of responsibility on us as Palestinians to take some steps. It's not only to give lectures to the Israelis what they should do. We should do lots of things. Maybe we should start with some steps. But unfortunately, we have a leader that does not care. So for us as a Palestinians, the priority is changing Abbas. The top priority. With him, we are blocked. We are not able to do anything. We lost the whole Israelis.
So
Thank
yeah,
you.
as
Thank
Summer
you,
said,
Summer. Yes. Go ahead, Gershon.
The number one obstacle for the Palestinians is their leader, and the number one obstacle for Israelis is our leader. And what I would add to what Samer said is that what's happening in the West Bank is an Israeli plan. The Israelis want an explosion in the West Bank. They're driving the Palestinians to a situation where they can no longer exist with the situation that they're living, and Israel is driving the Palestinians to explosion, so that they can, as some of our political leaders have said, Avi Dichter, former head of the Shin Bet, said in the Knesset, so we can do Nakba 2.0. This is what they're waiting for, and this is suicidal from Israel's point of view, and for the Palestinians, of course, it's horrendous. I participate in the demonstrations every week and during the week on Saturday nights in Jerusalem, and there are thousands of people there, and maybe there are 100,000 people around the country demonstrating, and it has zero political impact, zero. And I go to these demonstrations knowing that they're not going to change anything, but I go because of the hostage families. The hostage families have to know that they're not alone, that we are with them, and we're thinking about the hostages 24/7. And they're on our mind, and we're supporting those hostage families. They can't be in this fight against the government by themselves. In the end of the first week of the war, I held a Zoom with about 50 families of hostages who asked me, what can we do? What do we have to do? The first thing I said to them was, don't be quiet. Everyone is going to tell you to be quiet. Don't talk. The more you talk, you're going to raise the price. You're going to delay their return. And I told them that the most important thing they need to do is to change their loved ones into pictures and names that people recognize, so the Israeli people know their stories and know who they are. They're human beings. They're not numbers. And then the Israeli public knows the names of all these hostages. And we go every Friday noontime in the shopping center in my neighborhood, like centers around the country, and we call out the names of all the remaining hostages and demand that they be brought home. But actually, we have no ability to change the political reality, because Netanyahu looks at the 100,000, 150,000, 200,000 demonstrators and say there's a silent majority of millions who voted for me. And if they want to remove me, they can do that next elections. So we really have no ability to change what's happening in our government now. Maybe our legal system will be able to deal with it. Maybe these cases of corruption against Netanyahu's case in the court has been going on for years already, and he keeps delaying it and getting the court to agree to him delaying it. Now, just again, he's delaying it for another week because he has to go to Washington. So it's unlikely that that case will ever see the end of the tunnel that we're in it. But maybe some of these other corruption cases that are coming up now, the Qatar gate, the attempt to fire the head of the Shin Bet, the attempt to fire the attorney general, maybe the Supreme Court will show some spine and stand up for the civil rights and the political rights of the Israeli people against our corrupt government, which is dangerous. Netanyahu has been called a danger to Israeli security in both the Commission of Inquiry about the submarines, and he was personally responsible for the death of 45 people in the Meron disaster a number of years ago. And it's like nothing happened, nothing changes. So we have a very difficult political situation in Israel, and we don't know how to deal with it. And like in the United States, we see our democracy withering. We see it going out the door. This government is leading to an autocracy, to a dictatorship, we for years have no independent legislative branch of government. Is completely controlled by the executive. And the plan of the judicial overhaul, which is moving forward, is to remove the independence of the judiciary. And when that happens, we will no longer be a democracy. We've been a challenged democracy forever. It's very difficult to call ourselves a democracy when 20% of our public don't have anything near equal rights, the Palestinian citizens of Israel. And now we're destroying the institutions of our democracy and watching it happen. And the people don't want it. The majority of the polls, a very clear majority against Netanyahu and against the judicial overhaul and against the war, and want the hostages home. But we have very little ability to change that situation that's voiced in the polls every single week since the beginning of the war. Maybe we should talk a little bit about the positive things that Samer and I are doing.
Right. Yes. Yeah, that's a good, I think that's a good segue.
Samer, why don't you pick it up? You're on mute.
I think we should first of all see if there are more questions, and then we
Well,
can end by a positive note,
yes,
not me and you. I mean,
there are a few more questions. I will try to consolidate into bigger questions, okay, but we are running out of time, so probably that's another question that we haven't addressed properly. A lot of your answers, I mean, have been placed on the role that the Americans or the Trump administration is playing in being the broker to end this war. But the question is, do you see what role do you see other Arab countries and leaders should take, not only in ending this war, but also in helping to resolve the broader Israeli-Palestinian conflict in the long run?
Yeah, I think it's very clear the Arab countries have played a very positive role, and they're continuing to play a positive role, but they're limited in ability to influence the decisions that Israel makes, particularly during this time of war. It's difficult for the Arab countries to embrace Israel or the Israeli people when the Palestinians are under attack and what's happening in Gaza is taking place. Uh, what we need to look about is whether or not the rest of the international community can influence Israel. Here, I'll quote Samer, who says that the move to recognize the state of Palestine is a good move. It should be done by everyone. But we can have a situation where 191 or 192 member states of the United Nations recognize the state of Israel, but the occupation still exists and Palestine doesn't exist. Palestinians really only need to convince one country to recognize the state of Palestine, and that's Israel. And until Israel recognizes the state of Palestine, it's not going to matter. Can international pressure help that to happen? Until now, the strategy of the Palestinians has been either to use violence or to use the pressure of the international community on Israel, but that's backfired. The more international pressure on Israel, the harder the position of Israel becomes, both against the international community and against the Palestinians. We have this trick that we used and developed and turned into a science of calling every criticism of Israel anti-Semitic. And we have codified anti-Semitism in ways that includes legitimate criticism of Israel. And therefore, we have lost our ability to fight anti-Semitism when it's real, because we call every criticism of Israel anti-Semitic. One thing that might be effective, we don't know because it's only really just beginning, and that's taking Israel to the international courts, the International Court of Justice and the International Criminal Court. We know that Netanyahu needed to get out of Israel, and one of the few places he could go to was to Hungary, because the Hungarians said they wouldn't implement the warrant for his arrest, but every other country of the European Union will. They say they will, and this will become more. Local courts are going after Israeli soldiers who are traveling around the world, and I think the world is going to become very small for Israelis who are not going to be welcome in most countries of the world today. We see this organization that's tracking the movement of Israeli soldiers who have put themselves on TikTok and Instagram committing war crimes in Gaza, and the international community and local courts are going after them, and that will continue. Maybe that will be effective at changing Israeli public opinion. I don't think so, but it might. We don't know what the impact will be. But certainly a strategy like the one that Samer uses, and he'll talk about that, to address the Israelis directly and to recognize that the enemy of Palestine is not Israel or Israelis, but Israeli fear. This is a new strategy that needs to be addressed.
So let's provide a few more minutes to Samer probably to elaborate on this idea and to provide some optimistic notes to end this webinar.
well, I definitely know very well the Israelis. I definitely know very well the Palestinians. And I am 100% confident that the majority of Israelis and the majority of Palestinians are capable to support a model of coexistence based on the two-state solution. Any other solution is illusion. For a simple fact, the Israelis need, and we should respect this need, they need to live in their own Jewish democratic state. The only way to fulfill this need for the Jewish people is to allow them and help them to separate from millions of Palestinians. You cannot be Jewish or democratic while 51% of people living in the space that you are is under your sovereignty are not Jewish and don't enjoy rights. So, for the sake of the Israelis and for the pure interest of the Israelis, we should work together to provide conditions that will bring back again Palestinians and Israelis to support this. Now, why do Israelis now hesitate to support the two-state solution? It's out of security. It's not ideology. Those who oppose it out of ideology are a minority. The majority that oppose the two-state solution is out of mistrust. They cannot trust that this entity will be able to coexist with Israel. The problem in this conflict is not the solid issues of the conflict. It is not what kind of scenario we can find for Jerusalem or the borders or refugees or the settlements. It is the hard issues there is the hard feelings. We are filled of hatred and mistrust, and this kind of hard feelings does not allow us to move towards each other. And I believe that it's enough if one side started doing some changes, proving to the other side that we are now accepting, recognizing their needs. We Palestinians, we need to start by recognizing the historical rights of Jews in this land. The current narrative of denial of the rights of Jews, the links of Jews to this land, is very silly. For a piece of fact, Jews have always lived in this land. They have never disconnected. There was always some kind of majority or minority, but there was always Jewish presence in this land. And the Jews need also to recognize that they have never been alone here in this land, that there was others in this land, and these others are us. Okay, there has never been a Palestinian state. There has never been a Palestinian people before 100 years. Fine. But there are millions of Palestinians that now recognize themselves and give themselves the identity of being a Palestinian people. And everybody should respect this. So we both are connected to this land. And if we always had this common history in this land, it will be very easy for us when we recognize this common history to find a common future. So we need to change the narrative. When we change the narrative, we make the Israelis more comfortable in talking to us. Because we block them when we deny the relation to the land. So this eases things a lot. And then when we start fighting incitement and hatred, if Israelis see us fighting incitement and hatred in our education system, in the media, they will say, okay, maybe we also have some issues of incitement and hatred. Maybe we also should start talking positively about Palestinians in our media. And they will start responding positively. Israelis never respond positively to pressure. The only way for us as Palestinians to move ahead with Israelis is to try to persuade them, is to try to have a place, a space in their hearts and in their minds. By this strategy, we will be able to shift the public opinion in Israel. It needs some courageous leadership on our side that says things that are not very popular. For example, if we want to go to a two-state solution, we Palestinians, we need to be honest with our people and say the right of return means the right of return to the Palestinian state, not where your grandfather has left from Israel. Because I cannot sell a two-state solution to the Israelis while saying them you need to take the burden of millions of refugees. We need to take the burden of the million of refugees, and we need to allow them to survive in their own Jewish democratic state alone, with the minority of Palestinians that already exist there.
That's definitely a different perspective that many of us are not used to hear, especially coming from people on the Palestinian side. So I think that it's a very a lot of things to think about it as a conclusion of this very interesting webinar. Thank you, everyone. And I will pass the microphone to my colleague Gabriela for the closing words.
Well, thank you so much, Samer and Gershon, for sharing your sobering and your very important and motivating comments. You're extremely dedicated to both of you to the cause of a better future for both your peoples, and it's very inspiring to see that. Thank you, David and Jamie, for your good work on this webinar. Big thanks to you in the audience for being engaged. Do stay tuned for more webinars and send us your feedback if you wish. To all our Jewish friends, wish a happy Passover, and want to say that Canadian Friends of Peace Now will continue to do our work as best we can to work for better days for both Palestinians and Israelis. I'll just say goodbye, shalom, salam to everyone, and perhaps Gershon and Samer want to say their goodbyes. And thank you so much.
Anyone who wants to be in contact with us, it's easy to find both of us in social media on all the different platforms, and please do be in contact with us. We are in the process now of organizing a large meeting, the largest meeting of Israelis and Palestinians that will take place hopefully in June in Paris under the auspices of President Macron at the same time that Mohammed bin Salman from Saudi Arabia will be visiting Paris. We plan to bring 500 Israelis and Palestinians together with former Prime Minister Ehud Olmert and former Palestinian Foreign Minister Nasser al-Qidwa to this gathering where we are not doing it behind closed doors and out of the light of the media. We want this to be public, and everyone who would participate will be there in support of the two-state solution and courageous enough to stand up and be counted as being part of this. And this is part of the continuing efforts that Samer and I are working together under a newly formed body called the Alliance for Two States.
Well, thanks a lot for all of you. It has been an honor and pleasure to talk to you. And Hak Sameh Lekulam for all of you.
Thank you. And Gershon, just a final word. We will stay in touch and we'll promote that event very gladly. Do whatever we can to support it.
We will keep you posted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye. Shalom, salam.